Hello, and welcome to the launch of the program on sustainable lifestyles here by the Nordic Council of Ministers. This event is part of the Nordic Council of Ministers Hub in Helsinki, where we discuss and share knowledge about climate solutions and challenges. This hub has hosted more than 40 events this past week, and every day the Nordic Hub has been connected to the COP26 in Glasgow, from where we get inside reports on our Nordic policymakers participating in the negotiations. You can find more information on norden.org/COP26. Today, the program is this launch of our program on sustainable lifestyle. I will give a short introduction to the program, to a relevant report that just came out recently. We will have 2 panel debates, and finally, the Minister of Development, also responsible for environment, energy, and housing issues from Åland, von Røblam, will come with his comments and reflections. So welcome to the steering group for this program, and also welcome to the Minister. A short introduction of me. My name is Anders Fink. I'm from the Danish Ministry of Environment, where I, among other things, work on sustainability, and I will be today's moderator. I'm here in my capacity as the chairman of this new program. So, just to give you the setting, the Nordic Council of Ministers' vision for 2030 focuses on sustainability. The vision is for the Nordic region by 2030 to become the most sustainable and integrated region in the world. Part of the vision is to become a green, competitive, and socially sustainable Nordic region. And one of the vision's 12 objectives is sustainable consumption. And that's the reason behind this program. But why is sustainable consumption one of the Council's 12 objectives? Well, the Nordic countries are ranked in the world in the top of progress towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the so-called SDGs. However, this pretty picture changes when looking at the spillover effects from our high standards of living. In the latest Sustainable Development Report, all countries are ranked not only by their progress towards achieving the SDGs, where the Nordic countries are ranked high, but also by their spillover score. The spillover score measures the effects each country has on other countries' abilities to achieve the SDGs. And on this spillover ranking, the 5 Nordic countries are ranked between 135 and 155. This is not where we are used to seeing the Nordic countries in international rankings, but this may be one of the most relevant rankings for us to focus on going forward. Despite differences and variations within the Nordic region, the overall challenges to becoming a more sustainable region are especially on climate change, biodiversity and nature, equality, and sustainable consumption and production. Unsustainable consumption patterns in the Nordic region is also the focus on the recently released report towards sustainable consumption in the Nordic region. The Nordic Council of Ministers commissioned this study from the Swedish Environmental Research Institute, EVL-IVL. The report analyzes the climate and environmental impacts, but also social effects of private household consumption in the Nordic countries, including the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Åland, on the basis of 4 themes: housing, transport, food, and consumer goods. The study shows that transport, followed by food and housing, are the biggest sources for CO2 emissions for households in the Nordic region. On transportation, the researchers point out that the greatest potential for more sustainable transport lies in reducing the volume of short-haul flights, but other measures, such as switching to electricity-based transportation, public transportation, or soft transport, such as bicycle, could also have an impact. On food, the report shows that consumption of red meat is responsible for the largest volume of climate emissions, which is why the researchers recommend switching from red to white meat, or even better, from meat to plant-based food. The report altogether recommends 8 specific ways of making everyday life more sustainable in the Nordic region. Switching from red to white meat, switching from meat to plant-based food, avoid food waste, cut the number of flights, switch from private vehicles to public or soft transport, extend the life of goods, respect human rights in countries that produce goods, and finally reduce the total private consumption in the Nordic region. these recommendations are in many ways hardly big surprises. Nevertheless, they underline the need for further action on consumption. Today's launch of the Sustainable Lifestyle Program is one of the ways of trying to tackle some of the challenges documented in the report. So now, today marks the official launch of the program Sustainable Lifestyle in the Nordic Region. It's a 4-year program ending in 2024, and it's the first attempt in the Nordic Council of Ministers to have a multi-sectoral program that tries to go beyond the normal policy silos and combine the knowledge, perspective, and different approaches that these different policy areas and silos have. The program is run out of the Nordic House in Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands, and it has 6 projects from different sectors in the Nordic Council of Ministers. These 6 projects are on education on sustainable development, on sustainable cultural experiences, participation and communication for and by the youth, the Nordic Sworn Ecolabel, sustainable and healthy food systems, and finally, sustainability, lifestyles, and consumption from a gender perspective. The program has, as of today, its own website under norden.org, where all the relevant information can be found, including the report I just mentioned before. At its core, this program wants to answer a very simple question. How do we make it easier to make sustainable decisions in our everyday lives? Each of the 6 projects are relevant by themselves, but we see a value and potential in linking these topics in one program that has sustainable lifestyle choices at its core. So, what is a sustainable lifestyle? This is not a clearly defined term, and each policy area will come up with different answers. And this is what we are going to explore now in our 2 panels. These panels will give you insights into some of the answers, but also reflections and potential for further investigations into what a sustainable lifestyle could be. So now I will invite 3 members of the program steering committee up for the first panel on making sustainable alternatives. On gender and on culture, and on education and the youth. And the 3 members I would like to invite up are Solveig Korum, who's the Senior Advisor for Research and Development in Kulturtanken Norway, Anna Mikander, Senior Ministerial Advisor at the Ministry of Education and Culture in Finland, and finally Julian Lokulu, he's a youth representative in the Nordic Expert Group for Sustainable Development. And thank you. So, Solveig, when we think of sustainable lifestyle choices, we often focus on food we buy or flights we want to take. What does it mean to think of sustainability in the culture sector? Is it just about acoustic candlelight concert in cold warehouses, or what is your perspective here?
Well, the perspectives are potentially very wide. But personally, I first and foremost regard sustainability in the cultural sector as a catalyzer.
Can you check if the microphone is on? Sorry.
Okay.
Now it's on. Great. Okay, just to repeat very quickly, the perspectives are potentially very, very wide. Culture can be like anything and everything that we do in and surround it. But I regard culture as a very important catalyzer for consciousness and values. In sustainability thinking and to foster sustainable lifestyles, the cultural sector can contribute with very valuable knowledge, resources, and methods that may be of use for other sectors of society and the other sectors presented in the program, as well, like art expressions make us see the world differently or potentially new ways. It triggers critical reflections, other types of interpretations, it forms our values, it fosters community and relations, and in that space, that is where the transformation into sustainable thinking and sustainable lifestyles may happen. And so that's like culture more broadly, but if you look at the cultural sector as such, there is a huge potential of, well, like, for example, artists as change agents. They have potentially like a huge crowd following them, and they have like a talerør into so many different sections of society. So I do think that they can be role models and change makers in this. Yeah, so that's like one, and of course all the touring and well, like music tours, for example, there is a great potential of making those festivals, tourings, well, like just a very simple thing, how many batteries, if we are using like one-time batteries or rechargeable batteries for tours and for theater productions and these kind of things. So it's potentially very broad, and this is what we will explore in this 4-year program. So we'll get the chance to go into depth. Yes.
Thank you. Interesting. Anna, you come from the educational sector, and we know that children today, increasingly so, are exposed to thinking about sustainability, also worries about sustainability, worries about climate change. How can education on sustainability and sustainability issues such as climate change, biodiversity, help children and their teachers to become better at understanding these crises and the seriousness of our consumption and our resource use without creating fears and angst and anxiety?
Thank you, Anders. That's a good question. I would say maybe firstly that children and youth are quite knowledgeable in understand quite a lot on the issues and the challenges that the climate change is posing. So there is not maybe the actual. I think that understanding is already there. What the challenges are, or something that we can be better at is for example, we have a good theory base in the schools all across the Nordic countries on how to include the climate crisis or education for sustainable development into the curricula, but the actual implementing of it in the different schools across the Nordic countries varies a lot, and there I think the teachers maybe play a really a massive role in learning how to teach this, because for example education for sustainable development in most countries, at least I don't exactly remember how it is in all the Nordic countries, but in most of them it is written in the value base, it is written into the school culture, it is as an overarching theme in the schools. It's not maybe a subject per se, but it's an overarching theme in schools, which makes it also harder maybe for teachers to grasp how to teach it. So I think that our project, Education for Sustainable Development, is actually exploring this, how to help the teachers, how to support the teachers in teaching these things, these education for or sustainable development to the children equally across the Nordic countries. So we're seeing that there's a need for a network among teachers in the Nordic countries. There's a need for support among each other, peer learning, and those kind of things. And I think that it's a very good goal that this project has, that, and I hope that it will be well explored. In terms of the anxiety, teaching about anxiety about the climate crisis, I think that's a different thing altogether again, and that is maybe something that also the teachers don't have the tools to teach the children, that and that's media literacy again, about disinformation and those kind of things, and I think that's which should also be included in this kind of education for sustainable development. But yeah, that's.
Yes, and it seems like sustainability, it's both a strength and a weakness, that it's so broad. It's not a specific topic, but it's relevant everywhere. And I can see the challenge there for teachers to see the relevance across the different subject areas. We also have Julian here today. And it's interesting how youth are often drawn into these debates on sustainability and climate change, and it's interesting because a lot of young people, not all, but a lot of young people, a lot of students actually consume far less and maybe live more sustainably than most adults they do. What is it from your perspective that the role of youth can play in these debates about sustainable lifestyles?
Yeah, it is true that young people overall are more willing to change business as usual. Young people generally are actually very worried and concerned with sustainability matters because it is their future we're talking about. So definitely there is a lot of lessons we can learn from their ambition and their vision and the lack of fear to actually challenge business as usual. But I think the most important lesson here is to see that despite having so many young people that are really trying to change their way of doing things and to live more sustainably, these young people are still facing a lot of barriers to be able to do so. Young people that want to travel more sustainably and avoid flying, for example, end up having to do so anyways because train tickets are extremely expensive. That there is a crazy big economic barrier. Young people that would like to take public transportation over taking private transportation through cars, for example, in many cases are not able to do so because maybe there are not good infrastructure to do so. Maybe there are not good public transportation alternatives. This is a huge infrastructure barriers. There are even cultural barriers. Young people that want to, for example, eat more sustainably may have challenges when they go back home and ask their parents, for example, to make more sustainable food. Or when you actually have to go to a Christmas dinner and suddenly say, can we have a vegetarian option? Those things can be really seen very negatively upon. It's very hard to eat more sustainably if when you actually go to work, the food that is being served in your canteen is not sustainable. You need to eat something, and then you end up ending in that pattern of unsustainable consumption, even if you don't want to do so. And I think the lesson that we can get out of this is just focusing on individual action and just good intentions will not get us really far. We do need to make the sustainable choices the easiest one. They need to be the default, and it shouldn't be that live sustainably should be taking the extra mile, but actually that should be the easiest possible solution. I think that's what our program is focusing on here. We're trying to make sustainable consumption. We're not trying to tell people, hey, live more sustainably. We're trying to make it easier for them. But this is something that we need to get all sectors of society on board, from the private sector to politicians, to make the sustainable options for everyone the easiest ones to take. Otherwise, we're not going to get really far on this, on sustainable consumption on the Nordic region, but neither in any other region in the world.
No. And it's just really interesting how, again, that youth perspective, or like this perspective of changing cultures, now you're talking about youth cultures, but it could be other cultures, how they go across these like very more technical areas. We will have other panelists on food system and on eco-labeling, but even the cultural sector, I think it's interesting how there could be a youth perspective there, and maybe some potentials that could be exploited even more.
Well, there is definitely very much a very needed youth perspective. It's there, but I do think that what we need to do, not only the cultural sector, but in all sectors, is to really integrate the youth perspective. Not only listen to it as representation, but really find good modes of inclusion and participation in democratic processes. Everything from like involving youth in municipal plan processes, for example, or in the educational system, kind of how they interact it's like with their teachers, and how they're kind of co-creating knowledge instead of just being told knowledge. And also, and we as grown-ups, we have this challenge of really being ready to integrate those perspectives, not only say we are ready for change, we want change, but when suggestions come, we're just like, no, it's not possible, we tried these things before. So we really need to open our minds, and I do think that culture in that sense has a very important function, because culture speaks to all the senses, speak with all the senses. We create cultural expressions with our whole bodies, mind, heart, hands. So we don't only work from our head brains. We need to work from our heart brains in all that we do. And I do think that cultural activity has this potential of making the sustainability goals and sustainable lifestyles sensuous, and potentially also poetic, to push it even further. You know, that we build an ethical consciousness through illumination and not through moral fingers that we point at each other. But through this collective thing that we create, collective consciousness, we move in the direction that we need to go to create and to live sustainability. Sustainable, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to pick up on the fact that you were talking about this including youth from the very beginning in the democratic processes, and that's I think as a structural reform that we need to do, and I think that the education sector is I agree completely that we need to embrace that as well, and we have on the Nordic level there is a try at least to include and involve youth from the beginning in the processes, and the same in when I speak from a Finnish point of view, that we also part of the government program is to include and involve youth from the absolute beginning. What the challenges that we see though about this is that there is a certain there's only always a certain group of young people that are involved, and we want to involve everybody. We want to hear all the youth voices, and not just the particular ones who might be very engaged in societal issues in already from the beginning. That's we want to make it easier for them, and this is something that we had a big during the Finnish chairmanship, which is now this year in the Nordic Council of Ministers. We had a big conference in June on sustainable development and how to involve and engage youth, and there were a lot of voices. We heard the voices of the youth saying that they feel like there's no channels for them. The old channels are not. They're not viable. It's hard for them to use the old. We need to find new channels for them to be more engaging and be part of the processes in actual processes that we're talking about to change everything.
Yeah, and it's interesting how maybe on sustainability, that's one of the areas where the students actually want to have an input on what is being taught. I'm not sure that's the case on math or other subjects, but and that is definitely a challenge for the teachers and for the educational system to take that information in and actually use it to become actual education. Julian?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with the points raised. There is a need of including young people in the debate on how our future should look like at all levels, as you're saying. Shouldn't only be at the higher international levels and at national levels. It needs to be at the local levels. It needs to be at all possible levels. We do need to include young people for different reasons. There is one clear one that has to do that. First of all, they are citizens of our countries and cities, and they represent a substantial amount of our population. So actually not including them would mean that we miss a big part of our population in our conversations. Likewise, it's also important because they do bring new perspectives on the table when it comes to education, when it comes to culture. If not bringing those perspectives, we actually lose a lot by not having the new way of seeing things. And finally, it's also because it's our future we're talking about. The decisions that we're taking today in the Nordic countries, but as well in the global community, will end up affecting me for the rest of my life. And that's something that is very important to have. I think the discussion on saying how do we include everyone across social sectors is extremely important. It doesn't only apply for youth, it applies actually for all ages. It's still a more privileged group of society that gets to have these platforms to share their ideas. We're still losing a lot of people behind. And even when it comes to global discussions, we also need, at the Nordic level, we even need to include the Global South, because you were talking about the spillover effects, for example. Our actions are actually impacting negatively other people across the world, so they also need to be part of this discussion. So we do need to have a democratizing process where sustainability is something that we talk across countries, across ages, across genders, and across social sectors. And through that dialogue and through that conversation, I think we can get closer to our goals. Though in order to do so, we need to challenge the current way of doing so. as a youth representative, I've been invited to talk in many different events and conferences, etc. And I think many times you hear a lot this good intention saying, let's include youth, let's bring them on board. But it's more challenging. It's easier to just invite youth on the table that actually just then listen to what they're saying and change the way of doing things and challenging the way that we have been doing things up to now. So I think it's not only about bringing them to the table, but when they are on the table, listening to what they're saying and actually accepting that we do need to take those perspectives into account, and we need to change the way that we have been doing things up to now. Otherwise, we're just going to have people talking, but no one listening, and we're not going to get much farther than when we are right now.
No, as I'm hearing you speaking, both of you, I do think it's I think that like the school sector and the more kind of democratic spaces after school, I think that youth they are present in so many levels of society, and it's kind of we need specific ideas about how to do it in schools, and we need specific ideas about how to reach them and include them in their spare time. And I do think that those processes, in my opinion, they cannot be designed as like a project where you start here and you end here and you have this goal of including them all, goal of getting inputs for this and this, but it needs to be constantly relational and processual in a circular motion. And in that circle, and it's those relations we need to figure out how to design right now. So more than a linear project thinking in all this, we need to design and redesign our relations and the processes through which we work, create and recreate society.
Thank you. Thank you to this first panel. Very interesting. Thank you to Solveig, Anna and Julian. We will move on to the next panel about making sustainable alternatives the easy daily choice. And I'll ask you, my steering group members, to just swap places here. Making sustainable alternatives the easy daily choice, and also how gender and equality might play a role. I would like to welcome Sebastian Helm, Director of Food Safety from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Finland. Karen Dahl, the manager of product development at Nordic Ecolabel, and Kristin Mattsson, specialist in gender equality from the government offices in Åland. So thank you. I'll start with you, Karen. You, in some ways, have the easiest part today, and in this program, you represent the Ecolabel, and the Ecolabel's primary focus is actually on helping us making as consumers making sustainable and environmentally friendly choices. But how do you think this project fits into the program, and what are your perspectives here?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, you can say that I have the easiest role here. This program fits very perfect into the Nordic Swan Ecolabel's mission and vision. And this is also why we're very happy to be part of the program, so that we can support Nordic Council of Ministers' vision in this area. In this program, we wish to expand our portfolio of products that could be eco-labeled, and also wish to strengthen the requirements concerning sustainability on all our existing product groups. But we also want to make Nordic consumers even more aware of the positive impact that choosing Nordic Swan Ecolabel product and services has on sustainability. And in that at the same time, making it easier for the consumers to choose green through the Nordic Swan. We are so happy to be part of this program, because we are sure that all these goals are we are able to enhance the impact of the goals in the Nordic region through this participation of the program, because we're sure, and we have already experienced, that we can learn a lot from the other programs, and we also hope that we can support and inspire the other parts of the program, so we can help each other getting even more out of it.
Thank you, Karen. Sebastian, food we all consume every day. It's unavoidable. It's not a, yeah, we have to get it every day. And how do we make better food choices that are not only sustainable but also healthy? I know you have often you work with food recommendations, but they have historically focused more on health than sustainability. So how do you envision that we in the future can include sustainability in those recommendations and in that thinking?
Well, thank you, Anders. Yes, as you said, the Nordic nutrition recommendations, which we have been publishing since the beginning of the 1980s, we're now in our 6th revision of them, and they will be published at the end of next year. They've been mainly about nutrition, what foods are healthy to eat. But already in the last round, and certainly now in this round, which is ongoing, there's more focus on sustainability too, mainly about ecological sustainability, not maybe yet so much about social sustainability. But what we're seeing already is that the good news is that on a general level, if you eat healthy foods as recommended by the nutrition recommendations, most of the time this food is also better for the environment and it's more sustainable. The prime example is red meat, which we all know that we should eat less of because it has a huge climate impact and also some other impacts on the environment. If we cut down on the meat and switch to maybe lighter meat or even better to fish or to vegetable-based, plant-based diets, we know that this is a much more sustainable diet. And I would just like to say that you don't have to go vegan, you don't have to go vegetarian. The important thing is to cut down on those on that meat which you know is not sustainable, and eat something else instead. This is what we can say now, but obviously during the coming 4 years we will try to look more closely at the different dimensions of sustainability, and maybe then we will be able to even, I don't know whether it's a Svanmärke or whether it's some other label, but it would be the ideal thing that would be that we would be able to easily communicate to the consumers which food on the shelf or in the restaurant is sustainable and which is not.
Thank you. Christel, these two other panelists come from, I would say, somewhat more specific sectors. They have mentioned specific ways of making sustainable choices, so through labeling or recommendations. You come with the unique perspective of equality and gender, which is more cross-cutting. How do you think gender or other identity aspects affect how we consume?
I think that the gender, is it on? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Gender and there are gender stereotypes and norms that shape women and men and have an influence on how they consume, and not only what they consume, also in thinking about environmental question and how necessary it is to think of these questions and make green choices. So I think it's really important to be aware of what differences there are between men and women, but also to examine stereotypes and prejudices that we maybe have about what and how men and women consume and what choices they make. And I want also to mention that class and age and other social identities as well are very important in analyzing consumption habits among people, of course. And if we are aware of these stereotypes that we maybe have and about differences, we can better reach different groups in influencing them to make greener choices and avoid stereotypes in advertising and package products that fit better men, women, and other groups.
Yeah. So So when Karen and her colleagues are developing new eco labels, they need to not only look at the environmental aspects or the climate aspects, but they need to consider how does this label or how does this product group connect to certain classes or certain groups in society. And Karen, I want to ask you, because I know this specific project on ecolabels that is part of this program is looking into a very, very specific thing, which has become very, very relevant during Corona. So this is a label for e-commerce logistics. Can you explain a bit more about how such a label will take both environmental but also other sustainability aspects into account?
Yes, we are right now looking into eco-labeling e-commerce logistics, also called what you know as package transportation. And of course, climate impact is a huge issue for this product area. So that's where we're going to be very ambitious. We're going to set ambitious requirements concerning climate. But also other sustainability issues is important in that sector. We know that there can be great problems with working conditions for the chauffeurs, which we then also set requirements for, making sure that it's good working conditions. And then another issue is focusing on traffic safety. So that's other sustainability areas than just climate and environment that we also take into account. And just if I am allowed,
go ahead.
Yeah, I can just say that what you are working with concerning gender is very interesting because a lot of our product areas, we need to know how to reach these other parts of the society and consumers than our core consumers. We want to get known and be used as the easy choice for sustainability in more parts of the society and by the larger part of the population. So I'm really looking forward to your input.
And well, I go to Sebastian, but then Christian afterwards. Sebastian, so let me just challenge you a little bit, because we hear that there are like other aspects of sustainability than just the green aspects. We know that sustainability is both covers green, social, and economic aspects. So when you're looking at including sustainability into food recommendations, and the easy answer is you will look at the CO2 emissions. How do you envision, or could you? You don't have to answer, like come with the answer, but could you envision including other aspects of sustainability into food recommendations?
Yes, I could envision that. First, I'll just say that in a way, just looking at the environmental sustainability is maybe one of the most difficult ones. I mean, the food system is very complicated, and there's lots of actors who have different motivators why they want to change, or more importantly, why don't they want things to change? So, and already in the environmental sustainability, there's lots of things to look at, very many dimensions, and sometimes they're not really going in the same direction. And I think there it's really important, and that is the work we're doing right now with the Nordic nutrition recommendations. We're really looking at those maybe 5-6 dimensions of environmental sustainability and seeing which one is really important in our world, in the Nordic countries. I mean, for instance, we know that water is not really an issue. We have quite a lot of water in the Nordic countries, so although water might be a huge environmental factor somewhere else, we might instead look at nutrient flows into the water, which is polluting our waters and stuff like that. So we're really trying to put these into perspective, so that we, like with all work on sustainability, so that we know that whatever efforts we are putting in, that they will make the most difference. Now coming back to your original question, I can actually tell you that, I mean, basically we're looking at social sustainability already in the nutrition recommendations that we have been doing for 40 years, because the way they work is that we develop them in the Nordic cooperation, and it's purely based on science, what food is nutritious and what is not. But then after that, it is transferred into the cost recommendation, or the meal recommendations in each of the Nordic countries. And those meal recommendations form the basis of all food that is served officially. I mean, in school canteens, in kindergartens, in universities, maybe somewhere also for the subsidies that the state gives for lunches. So in a way, that also already addresses the social dimension of the problem, and the reason why we still are rather healthy in the Nordic countries is that we have such a large amount of publicly served lunches, and they usually follow the Nordic nutrition recommendations. So in that sense, we're dealing with it, but at the same time, we also know that when you look at food consumption habits, it's usually the population group which has the least income and the least education who are also buying the most unhealthy foods. So certainly there are things that we need to address still, and we have to look at how can we again find those vulnerable groups which are now not at the moment not consuming sustainably even for their own health, and how can we reach them, and that's where the work of the other groups come in.
Yes. And I want to ask a question that maybe it's for all of you, because it goes across the different sectors. Are there risks of making it too complicated to make the right sustainable choices in the way that you make food recommendations, or, for example, labeling, that you set the bar too high, so that that people just say, that's not for me, that's another class that can deal with that issue, because it seems to be an upper class thing to buy eco-labels or to follow specific food recommendations, and how to avoid it. Very broad, but maybe one of you could give it a try.
Well, of course, we are. What we work with is that we try to take the complication out of the choice, making it it's complicated for us to set the requirements, and it might be complicated for some companies to live up to the requirements, but we will help them with that, and we are working on making it easier through digitalization, which is also part of this project for us. But for the consumer, it should be very easy. And as of today, we do not see any approach that it's only for high-class products that are eco-labeled. Not at all. You can get both cheap and expensive products, whatever you want, within the different areas that we label. So I can't see that for the consumer that it has to be a niche, or everybody should be able to find it the easy way in their everyday life.
Christian?
Yeah. I want to tell that this Nordic knowledge overview that the equality project will produce, it will be finished already next autumn. So it's a bit smaller project than the other projects in the whole program. But we hope that it will be used in all the other projects, and it's a very cross-sectoral overview. So hopefully it's useful for future project in consumption and lifestyle among people.
Yes, and the project, I think we will, when it finishes next year, the specific one on sustainable lifestyle and gender inequality, we will also make sure that those results are being communicated, and also make sure that they are used across these other projects, and even maybe projects or programs outside of here. But Sebastian, you had a...
Yeah, thank you, Anders, for the interesting question, because I think you have to it's true that the work that Karen is doing with the Nordic Ecolabel, it's really important, and I fully believe that when you have good, straightforward labels, it's very easy for the consumers to make a choice. So I think we really should work in that direction, and my hope is, of course, that we could also have eco labels for food products, but that is, of course, a very complicated area, as I said. But I think we are getting there, either on a Nordic level or maybe on a European level, but certainly there is a strong push towards the eco labels for food as well. But I just wanted to to also note the fact that labels aren't everything, that the criteria by which we develop the labels are of course at least as important. And the good thing is that if we really look at the science behind sustainability and try to come up with criteria for what is good and what is not so good, then you can also use these rather complicated criteria among organizations who are doing public procurement. And so, I mean, for let's say a city like Helsinki who buys food for its schools in massive amounts, they don't need a simple eco-label. They can have a little bit of more complicated criteria that they use once a year when they make decisions on where they will buy their bread or their greens from. So the important thing is that we just have the knowledge on what is sustainable, and it doesn't always have to be a simple brand yes or no. But of course, I mean, for different groups you have different needs.
Remember to keep the microphone close enough.
Oops, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you to this panel. I think it's very, very interesting how we both have these very specific tools, recommendations, labels, but then we have cross-cutting concerns that these labels and recommendations have to take into account gender equality, class, etc. And well, thank you to this panel now, and we will wrap up. I will, thank you. And thank you to the other panel as well. These were the 6 members from the steering group, and this program is new. It's not a trial, it has been launched today. We're really happy about that, but some of the discussions and the approach to sustainability is new, at least within the Council of Ministers. So instead of the silo thinking, we are trying to have these conversations across sectors. And I think sometimes they'll be smooth and easy. They already exist. Other times they are new, exciting, and complicated. And this is part of what this program is going to explore. Now I will invite the Minister, Alfons Røblom. He's the Minister of Development, Environment, Energy and Housing from Åland. And would like to hear your perspectives and comments on this. I will step back and just give you the stage, and we will hear your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it on, this one, or? Hello?
No, I think I switched it off. So
I see you, I see you. Indeed, energy saver. Thank you very much, Anders. Thank you very much, all the panelists. I think this is a hugely important and very interesting discussion. Our consumption is a huge part of our emissions and a route to other problems socially and so forth when it comes to our struggle to get to a sustainable society. Consumption is very much connected, I believe, to norms and gender and the stereotypes of what makes you successful. And I think that's very good that that perspective is represented in this work. I mean, we have this stereotype of if you are successful, you buy a lot of things and you go by business class on large airplanes and have lounges where you are served some liquor and all that stuff. And I just wanted to tell you the anecdote that I traveled to the COP last week, and I did it by train and by ferry. It took a little bit longer, of course, and it was questioned. How can you put 2 days on the road to get to the COP? And I said, well, firstly, I can't take an airplane to a climate summit. It feels very strange when I have an opportunity to do it in some other way. And secondly, I had to tell people that was asking me that it is not a waste of time to sit on a train these days. You can work and you can think, you can read, you can sit, you can talk to people on the phone. But the stereotype of traveling is that it is a waste. It takes time and you can only sit and look out of the window. You can't do anything else. So that's one thing. And then the stereotype, of course, that it is it's a waste of time and it's something new. You have to think new in new ways how to travel. And I think for me it was very interesting because the time that it took also made me to consider what time is. Why are we in such a rush all the time? In whatever we are doing, we have to go there as fast as possible. To do what exactly? Instead, you have to make quality time of your traveling, and that's just one aspect of thinking new in how we what kind of consumers we are. And I think that's also why I think it's so great that the culture and art is a part of this work as well, because as you mentioned, it is about creating bridges between old and new, also when it comes to generations, to bring generations together. It's also about old and new in ways of thinking. And the arts and culture, I'm a master of arts myself, the art is also questioning a lot of, very often it should be, and a little bit shake our heads so that we are able to think in new directions. And of course we have the education, and I always fear a little bit that we put everything on the education. We can solve this by the education. We put this on the teachers. The teachers, this is their responsibility. So I will not step in that trap. But I think it's important that we in the Nordic, we understand that there are perhaps some very good changes that we can do together across the Nordic countries in making it easier for our kids and our young people to get a more hands-on approach on what this is really about, to reconnect with where does the food come from. What is a farm? We know that people are moving more and more into the cities, that we are in an urban era of our history, and do we lose the connection with the food? Do we lose the connection with where the energy comes from, where our clothes comes from? So I think the reconnect would be a part of this, to really know what this is all about. And of course, the consumption, as was mentioned here earlier, it has to be easy to do the right thing. Because when we are struggling in our everyday life, running around, trying to do everything we have to do, it must be easy. So then that's where the labels come in. It has to be that we can trust this label to have all these criteria, so that we know that that's the one. Make it easy to do the right thing. Just to conclude, this is a very urgent discussion. It's an urgent matter. It's an urgent project. And I would like to stress that it is important that this program and the project and the work that will be done has the full support, political support from the Council of Ministers, and all the political support that is needed, and perhaps to create a high-level ministerial reference group that will closely follow how this project is being done, so we can get the fruits of the program and the fruits of the project directly connected to the policies that has to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the Minister. It is good to know that we have the backing from up high, and we look very much forward to continuing the program and actually presenting the results as they come. I want to finish up now and just want to say thank you for taking part of the launch of the program on sustainable lifestyles, both you sitting at home and the people here. We, and I talk on behalf of the steering group, the project managers and the program manager, Inger Sørensen, we are excited for what's coming to happen in the next few years, for the reports, events, conferences, and other results that will flow from this program. And we hope that the program can help us in understanding how sustainability is relevant in many aspects of our lives and in making it easy to make sustainable lifestyle choices, not only when we consume, but also when we decide not to consume. That's why we say lifestyle. So yeah, making it easier to make sustainable lifestyle choices is the focus of this program, and we look forward to continue it the next few years. Thank you to all of you. Tak.